And it's going to be mainly focusing today on nouns, but we'll be doing a little bit of everything. But don't worry, because every time I'm going to start by doing very quick, not very long, but very quick review of what we covered the last time, just to get our minds working before we start doing Latin, right? So we can wake up. Because that first little bit of time that you're getting into whatever you're studying, you kind of have to wake your mind up, right? To get into it. So we're going to do a quick review, like I said. So I talked last class that Latin is a mother language, right? It's an ancient language. It's not necessarily spoken in the same way as, say English or Mandarin or Japanese or something like this as today. But it is a mother language, right? It has a whole bunch of children, right? Which are the modern languages that we speak today, right? In from most of the European countries, right? So like French, English, Portuguese, Italian, etc., right? These kinds of languages. And I talked to you about how if you learn Latin, it makes learning all of these other languages so much easier because they all come from Latin, right? It's their mother language. We learned the Latin alphabet and the pronunciation, right? We learned that the alphabet is almost exactly the same as our modern alphabet that we're using today, right? Except for a few characters, right? Like I said, the U was invented later and the J and W were invented later, right? So, but other than that, easy, right? All the same as our own. We got into a little bit of grammar. Not much, but we started talking a small bit about that right near the end. And I told you that the main thing that I wanted you to think about was that Latin had very special endings on the words to tell you what that word was doing in the sentence, right? And then finally, we talked about how when Latin was spoken, right? The history of it being spoken by the people who were born speaking it, the ancient Roman people, and everybody that they took over eventually. And today we're going to look at a family that had been taken over by the Romans. And that's what our whole story book is about, right? Okay, so we're going to start with just some fun things. We're going to look at this, right? The SPQR. And some people might have seen it. Some people may not have. It is this fancy Roman expression made in short form, right? With just the letters. So lots of people don't know what the heck this means. They see it, they know, oh, that's something about the Romans or Latin, but I don't really know what it is. Now you're going to find out. It means Senatus Populesque Romanos, right? This is what this means. And what does that mean? You might ask. It means the Senate and the people of Rome, right? And this was a kind of like an expression, a little motto, a little saying that the Romans had about kind of how big they were, how grand they were, how amazing they were, right? And this signum, as it was called, would be put wherever the Romans took over. It's almost like a flag in modern times, right? But it's a little saying, right? So the Senate and the people of Rome is what that means. And I just wanted to start with something fun like that. Okay, so we're going to start now by talking about Latin. So we're going to have to learn a little bit of grammar because if we don't, then we're not going to know what the heck is going on in the sentence. I could tell you, oh, this sentence means this, but unless you really understand what that sentence is doing, you really don't know. So that's what all today is going to be about at the beginning. So we're going to talk today about word order or syntax, right? That's just a fancy word that means the order that the words go in a sentence. And we're going to talk about grammatical cases. I know there's some weird words there. Don't worry. You're going to find out what they all mean today. So I'm going to read these two sentences and we're going to analyze them a little bit, right? Puer, puellae, bellae, rosam dat. Now remember, keep in mind this sentence, look at the endings of the sentence, right? Keep in mind, right? Now I'm always gonna, any of the important endings, I'm going to make them bold so that you see what's going on, right? This sentence means literally, the boy is giving the pretty girl roses. That's what that sentence is saying. Now, I'm going to show you that it's not in the same order as English is. And some of you might be know that some languages have different order of the words, how they go, right? So puer is boy. That's the word for boy. So that's the same. Puella bella. Well, that means pretty girl, but is next. That's not the same. What's going on, right? And then we have rosa, which is roses, dot, to give, right? It's in almost backwards to English, right? So just right now, notice like they're in different orders, right? So that's because Latin has a different syntax or a different word order than English does. So in Latin, and unlike English, well, I'll do the English one first, right? First is the subject. So the main idea, what the sentence is about, who is doing things in the sentence, right? That's the subject, the main idea of what's going on. Then in English, the next comes the verb, which is, you guys might know, the action word or a word about being, right? So that would be is in this case, and then the object or whatever is happening. So if something's being given, the thing that's being given. So that is what? That is the roses, right? Now in Latin, it goes subject. Okay, that's the same. Then the object is next, and then the verb, right? The verb is always at the end of the sentence in Latin. And you'll see this, right? And you'll notice this is where we're starting to get into a little bit of those grammar words, right? Some of those strange words that maybe you don't know exactly what they mean. Now I'm going to show you exactly what they mean. Now this will apply to any languages that you learn now. It doesn't have to just be applied to Latin. It can be applied to everything. So now you'll know these words, right? It's the subject, and I said, it's the main idea of the sentence. That's what a subject is. It's the person or the thing that does the action in the sentence, right? So it doesn't always have to be somebody. It can be something as well, right? The object is the person or the thing that has the action done to it, right? So it's not the main idea. It's whatever is happening, right? There's two different categories, but they're not too complex. Don't worry. There's the indirect object, the direct object. And they're exactly what they're describing. The indirect object is whatever is indirectly affected by the subject. And the direct object is something that's directly affected by the subject. And then the verb, that's the easy one, right? It's the action word or a state of being, right? And I put it out here for you guys, right, to see, right? The subject equals the boy. The direct object is the roses. The indirect object is the pretty girl. The verb is giving, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. So let's look at this again, right? Let's look at another example that's not from your book, right? And the reason why I do this is so we can have a little bit of different sentences than just what's going on in the book. So we're not just looking at those, we're looking at different ones that are a little bit more creative and show us a little bit more what's going on, right? They may be a little bit harder, but you'll see that they're very, very useful. And I always break these down so you guys know exactly what's going on. So here's another example. Pauciviris sapientiae student, right? And we see it's the subject, right? Is pauciviri, object, sapientiae, and the verb, student. Now, and I give you the English order of this, right? We see the subject is few men, right? The verb are eager, that's student, right? For wisdom, that is sapientiae, right? Remember, I told you guys that Latin words are like, they work a lot harder than English words do. They can do things that would take maybe 2 or 3 words to do, depending. So these endings are actually doing two different words, you can see, right? So this is wisdom, sapientiae, this word. But wait a second, we have another word here in English, for wisdom. Why is that? That's because the I ending is being that word for, right? So, and actually I'll explain this little picture down here. We have a very famous tutor from Rome, Seneca. He's the old man here, and he's pointing at the piece of paper. He's teaching his student, who is the emperor Nero, right? This is Nero. Wasn't necessarily a nice emperor. He's kind of grumpy with a lot of things and very ruthless. And you can see on his face, he's not interested in learning, right? It's a very famous student-teacher relationship in Rome, these two, right? And he was known to be a little reluctant to learn things. Seneca, on the other hand, was a very, very, very wise man. Wrote a lot of poetry too. Okay. So did you notice something about Latin nouns, right? The Latin nouns are extremely important, as I said, right, with their endings. You've learned that last time that the nouns, those endings can show gender, right? I said that the feminine names or the girls' names are usually ending with a, and the boys' names usually end in us, right? And as well, I told you that there's a third gender, which is neuter, which just means it's neither feminine or masculine, is all that means. So that's one thing that they do, but they can also show us exactly what the word is doing in the sentence with those endings, right? They can show us whether the word is the subject of the sentence, whether it's the indirect object of the sentence, the direct object, possessive. All of these things are shown by those endings, right, that are on the words. And you may notice that English does this differently than Latin. English doesn't have those funky endings on the end, right? How do they make meaning in English is through where the words are in the sentence. So if I said, the boy is giving pretty roses to the girl, you know exactly what's going on. But if I said, the girl is giving pretty roses to the boy, do you see how the meaning changes depending on where the words are? Now it's the girl giving the boy roses, right? So say it again. It's through where the words, sorry, are in the sentence that tells us what English is doing, what is going on in it. Latin doesn't work this way at all. It doesn't work this way at all. So it's a little difficult. You have to think a bit differently because now we're getting the meaning from the endings. But what that means is you could theoretically put the words in any place in the sentence and they'll say the exact same thing because the endings are telling us what's going on. Now remember, I said the endings are important. I haven't told you what those endings are called. Those endings that I'm talking about are called case endings, right? Cases, as I say. So when I say a case ending, you know that it's those really important endings on the end of nouns, right? Okay, so I say don't be worried because grammar can be a little bit overwhelming for people to understand, right? But for now, really what I want you to understand and what I want you to get is that the nouns in this sentence are showing us exactly what's going on because of the endings. Now, they don't talk about all of this stuff in the book, but I'm going to teach it to you on our own time. So it makes all the stuff in the book very, 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 very easy. You're like, the book wants you to learn like down here. We're learning like up here, but it's okay because the only things that you're ever going to have to do from homework are the little sentence or the comic books in that, right? Okay, so let's move on here. Okay, so we're going to get into looking at the book itself, and I will actually have the pages that we're doing from the book up on the slideshow, just so you guys can see that, right? Because we don't want anybody who maybe doesn't have the book to not know what's going on. So I'm going to just go through actually all the words first before we read the story, the little story, right? So we have quises, who are you? Qui estis, right? And who are you all, right? I want you to notice something about these words. These words have a QU at the beginning. Now, we have a word in English for asking something, it's called a question. And the reason that we have that qua in question is because all question words in Latin start with QU. You know how in English we start with WH, right? Who, what, when, where, and why, right? They all, wah. There's WH to that. Latin's kind of like the same thing, except we have qua, right? And you'll see more words with this QU as we go on throughout the book. Mater, pater, right? We went through those last time. Remember, they're very similar to our own language today, right? We get many words from these. Filia is daughter. And you see that macron, remember, these lines above the letters tell us whether it's long or short. So when we see those, we know that it's not filia, right? It's filia, right? Because of that I having the line over it. Filios is son. Remember, endings, right? The a for daughter, right? That's an a ending. It's feminine. Filios, us, right? That's masculine, right? It makes sense. We're talking about somebody's son. Infants, little child, right? It's like we could just say a child, but it's a younger child, right? Somebody who's maybe 4 years old or so, right? Not like a baby, but a little child, right? Servi are the slaves, right? And we're going to see how they lived. And then Windolandiae is the at Willianda, which is the place that we're going to be talking about. And it's okay because I'm going to read the intro to you guys about where this is. And then we have mus, mouse, right? It's pretty easy. Files, files is cat. You notice how feline in English, right? It sounds like files, feline. That comes from Latin, right? Remember, I told you all those scientific words for animals and plants and all of those things. Almost all of them come from Latin. Not all of them. Some of them are from different stuff, but a large amount of them come from Latin, right? So if a feline is a cat, files, right, is Latin. Now I've given you your first verb here. We're not going to really go deep into it. I just want you to see, right? This is something the book isn't showing you, but they're trying to teach you this, actually. They're just trying to sneak it into your mind without you knowing, in a way. And this is your first verb, right? The to be verb, right? I am, you are, he is, she is, right? That kind of stuff. So sum es est, sumus estis sunt, right? And don't worry about this too much. I just want you to see it. And I want you to hear it first, right? So that when we get into this stuff, like I say, easy, 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 right? I want you guys to be almost like too prepared for Latin, and we'll get into why that is as we go on. Okay, so let's continue on here. So, well, I'll just read this quick little beginning thing that they talk about, because we're not actually in Rome in this, in all the little stories in the book. We're not in Rome. We are actually in England. And the reason why they do this is because there was actually a fort that had a lot of archaeological discoveries made. And we found that there was a family living there, right? And so all of the stories that you're hearing in this are kind of recreations of different stories that they may have lived through, right? Based on things that we found, right? And we'll see more of this as the stories go on, right? So I'll read this very quickly. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Britain was conquered by the Romans, and the Britons became part of the huge Roman Empire. The Roman family that you're going to read about lived in the north of Britain in a place called Willolanda. And for anybody who wants to know, that just means the land of the wine, right? So apparently grapes must have grown very well there for wine. It is close to Hadrian's Wall. And then they tell you what Hadrian's Wall is. And actually you can still visit what's left of Hadrian's Wall today in Scotland. So after about 75 years after the Romans arrived, the Roman Emperor Hadrian came to Britain and ordered his soldiers to build a great wall, basically to make sure that nobody from the north could come and attack the Romans. Then the soldiers then had to patrol the wall, and it is known as Hadrian's Wall. And you can still see parts of it today. It stretches from the north of Britain as far east and west and passes near Wilolanda. And we have Minimus telling us that that's where he lives. Okay, let's go through this together. So I'm going to just read this all of the little interactions with you, and pay attention to how I intonate the sounds, right? And just absorb that into yourself so you know how the rhythm of Latin goes, because it's a little different than English. All right. Minimus sum, mussum. Quises, lapidina sum, mater sum. Quises, Flavius sum, pater sum. Quis est? Flavia sum, filia sum. Quis est? Iulia sum, filia sum. Quis est? Rufus sum, infans sum. Qui estis? Candida sum, Corinthius sum. Servis sumus. Windolandiae sumus. Quis est? Vibrisa sum, filiae sum. Mus exit. All right, so let's go through these together, right? We have minimusum, right? I am, right? We see that the sum, it means I am, right? So minimus, right? They almost speak a little backwards, almost like the Star Wars character Yoda, right? Happy I am, right? He talks backwards in that kind of way. And that's how Latin works. That's how it sounds, right? It would be something like minimus I am, right? But we would translate it properly to English, right? I am minimus. I am a mouse, right? Who are you, right? Qui es? Quis es, right? Who are you? Lapidina sum. I'm Lapidina. I'm a mother, right? I'm the mother. It would probably be a better way to say that, right? And we have qui es? Who are you? Flavius sum, pater sum. I am the father, right? I'm Flavius, right? Remember, it's the W sound, right? The V in Latin is not va, it is wa, right? They said wa, right? So just to keep that into your mind, right? Flavius sum, pater sum. Qui es? Flavius sum, filia sum, right? I am Flavia. I am the daughter. Qui es? Right? Who are you? Iulius sum. Remember, this is the old way of saying the name Julius. Remember, there was no J in Latin. It made more of a Y sound. You might remember when we went through the pronunciation, it made more like a Y, right? So Julius, Julius sum. I am Julius. I am the son, right? Who are you, right? Qui es? Quis es? Rufus sum, infans sum, and remember, right? It's hard to do, so it takes practice. But the Romans would they would roll their R's like that. And actually, if you go to Italy today, people still do that when they say the R's. And actually in Greece as well, that it's still rolled in that way, right? Rufus, I am Rufus. I am the young child. Now, here is where things change. Qui estis? Well, we had qui es before, right? Why is it qui estis? You may realize, yes, it's because there's multiple people he's talking to, right? Who are all of you, right? Rather than you, right? Latin, unlike English, English will do just you, right? You for one person or you for lots of people, doesn't matter. It's all you in English. In Latin, it's not like that. It's more like you all, right, is how we would say it in English. We don't really talk like that anymore, but when we want to talk about multiple people, right? So that's why it's qui estis, right? Who are all of you, right? And they introduce themselves, right, as the slaves of the family. And we'll see that the slaves had actually interesting lives of their own. Actually, Corinthius is more like a teacher to the children in these times, right? He's a slave, but he's more of a tutor, is actually what he would kind of be like. Okay, Windolandae sumus. We are the Windelandai family basically is what they're saying in that. Then Guiest, and then Urbrisa. An interesting thing about Urbrisa's name means whiskers, actually. It's a little hidden thing in that. Okay, and then mus exit, right? The mouse goes out, right? Is what that literally means, all right? Okay, so we want to talk about this because this is real people. These are real people we're talking about here, right? And there's this little note in the book that I'm going to read to you, right? Flavius, the father of our family, is in charge of the Roman fort at Willadanda, right? So he was kind of like a general. He and his family lived there in about 97 to 102 AD is when they lived. So this is a little bit later in the Romans period, right? You notice it's not way back in like 500 BC. This is a little bit later, right? It's later on. So when you come across dates in history, now this is very important to remember. If you're ever going to study history any more than this, right? It's important to check whether the dates refer to BC, they call it before Christ, or AD, right? After Christ, right? Or it literally means AD. People would say after death. It actually means, and it says here, Anno Domini, which means the year of our Lord. This is actually what AD meant. A lot of people forget about that because people haven't been speaking Latin lately in the world. Like I said, it means the year of our Lord. Julius Caesar, right? This now we're going back, and it gives you a little timeline, a really simple timeline, right? 55 and 40, or sorry, 54, sorry, BC. Julius Caesar, great Roman general, brings his army to Britain, and he doesn't stay there long, right? He actually does a lot of fighting in France during this time, but it wasn't called France yet, but modern day France. So then zero, right? The year 0 AD, we got Christ being born in the province of Palestine, right? So near Israel. And then we have 43 AD, the Roman Emperor Claudius invades Britain. He tries to conquer it, right? He tries, he doesn't really exactly do it. 66, we have the Celtic queen Boadicea. She tries to fight the Romans off and doesn't win. And now we go up to where the family actually lives in, which is 100 AD, right? Flavius and his family live at Willadanda. And then the wall is built a little bit afterwards, right? About 22 years later. This, as what we're seeing right now, is what Willadanda looked like as a model. This is a model actually at the Willadanda Museum that you can visit today. It is just a very small scale of it, but you can see that the buildings are very Roman looking, right? They're not like little huts. They're quite nice looking. And of course, this is what it looks like today when you visit. This is actually the remnants of the bathhouse, right? Because the Romans had a very long history of using bathhouses, right? Kind of public places where people would go and take a bath. All right. So let's take a little break from all of the Latin like language stuff, and let's look at Roman numerals, right? Just to have a little break, give our minds a little down, right? So you might recognize some of these. You've probably seen them around different places before. And I'm going to talk a bit about them. Don't worry, we don't need to know how to count with Roman numerals exactly. It's more just so we can understand how they work, right? So we got 1, 2, 3, right? Those are easy. And then we have 4. This is the strange one, right? This is one that gets people a little bit confused. And it's kind of like it's saying 1 before 5. But it wasn't always like this. Originally, when the Romans did the Roman numerals, they actually would just make 4 lines for 4. But people started getting confused as to whether it was 4 lines or 3 lines, right? Because sometimes people would write a little bit messy. And so later on, this way of doing 4 and then the other numbers, right? You can see 9 is the same thing, like 1 before 9, right? Like I say, you'll see these in a lot of different things. They're used sometimes on books right at the beginning, like if you're on like early chapters of books, sometimes they don't have the normal numbers, right? They'll use these instead. And then in other things too, right? In culture. So this is a fun little fact. When I was younger, I actually learned Roman numerals and a little bit of Latin vocabulary with the help of video games, though I didn't realize I was learning Latin. And it's the Final Fantasy series, right? The Final Fantasy series was the first time when I was little that I saw Roman numerals, and I was wondering, what the heck are these? Eventually, I basically set all the games beside each other, and I figured out how to count with using this, right? To put all the games beside each other to know 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we have the newest one, which is 15. If you know any of this, a lot of the characters are named Latin names, right? The newest being Final Fantasy 15. The main character's name is Noctis, which comes from Noctis, I should say. His name comes from the word for night, for nighttime. All right. Let's look at some of the vocabulary. We'll run through these again, right? And then we'll do a little bit more sentences before things wrap up eventually. Okay, so pauki, few, right? Remember, pay attention to this I, right? We'll get to what that is all doing eventually. Student, they are eager. Now notice the NT, right? That NT is actually what is saying they, because, and we'll have a full lesson on this eventually, but Latin verbs work in a way where the who is speaking, whether it's I or you or he or she or they or whoever, is shown by the ending of the Latin verb, right? What goes on at the end of the verb, that tells us who is talking, right? And we're going to see more examples, and I'll keep pointing that stuff out to you. We have wir means man. We get a lot of words in English today from this. We get the word virtue, we get the word virility, we get all kinds of these fancy words from this, right? It just literally means man, right? All right, femina, right? Femina is woman, the word for woman, right? And we get words like feminine, femininity, female. All of these words come from the word femina, right? So you can see how you learn 1 or 2 or 3 Latin words, just learning the words. You don't even need to know anything about Latin. And you all of a sudden learn lots of words in English, lots, because you learn where all these fancier words come from, because they come from Latin. Usually a lot simpler word meanings in Latin than what we do, but that's where they come from. Amo, amo is I love, right? Amo. And you'll notice that o, right? That o ending, you notice even below, woko for I call and I love, you notice that o is saying I, right? Amo. We get lots of words from amo. And this is important, right? Whenever we go through the vocabulary, that we talk about different words that come from Latin, right? We call these Latin cognates. It's not really an important word to remember. Just know that you can learn so many different words just off of this, right? And that it is an important part of studying Latin because it is strengthening your English skills while learning this other language. Because remember, as I said, when we study this, you want to read it aloud while you're writing it and speaking it, right? You want all of those things to go on at once when you're on your own studying, so that you get all of the experiences that language is, right? Which is visual, and then auditorial, and then speaking, right? So amo, we get the words, actually the modern word for love in French comes from amo, amore, right? We get amorous, right? So like it's a word for loving, right? Amorous, right? We get this from. We get many other words from that. And vocal, I call, right? The word I call, vocal. You may see the word vocalization come from this. You see vocabulary comes from the word for woko. Right? We get lots of things. All of these things having to do with speaking, right? From the verb woko, I call. Ira. Ira is anger. And we get many words from ira. We get irritation, right? Irritable, irate, right? All kinds of words that mean angry, maybe in a more complicated way of angry, but they all mean angry one way or another. Next, forma. Forma is the word for form, but it also means beauty at the same time, right? And those of you who speak more than one language, right, you'll know that sometimes words don't line up in other languages, right? They don't really mean exactly the same things in each language, and there's sometimes it's hard just finding one word to fit something. If I think of, a Mandarin word like Dao, Dao means road, but it doesn't just mean road. It means way, it means a path, it's a spiritual term in Chinese culture, right? All kinds of things come to my mind. So it's not just one word. That's why I have two words here, right? For form and beauty, right? So there's the idea that it's a beautiful form, right? Right? It's not just your body, right? It's not something that's just like ugly, right? It has a feeling of beauty beside it. Patria. Patria means fatherland. It means your own country, not somebody else's country, right? Not somebody from another place, but your own country, your own place that you live in and you come from. You might know, say maybe in Russia, they'll not say the fatherland, but they say the motherland, right? It's a different way of saying it, but it's the same kinds of thing, your own country. We get a lot of words from this. And actually, if you're very paying attention, you'll see that patria has the word pater in it. It's just squeezed a bit more short. Pater, right? Father. Fatherland, patria. We get the word patriotic from this, right? To be really loyal to your country is to be patriotic. We get patriarchy, right, from this, right? A country that's ruled by men, these kinds of words from this. Philosophia. Philosophia. Now remember, there's this ph. It's not in our language, right? We say right? Philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's philosophia, right? They did used to pronounce each one of these sounds. Over time, in languages, like I said, languages evolve just like people evolve. Things change. So sounds kind of change over long periods of time. People start to speak differently, right? And so you can see that with this word, spelt exactly the same in today's world, right? Philosophy, pretty much the same way, but it sounds different. And this is actually an ancient Greek word. The Romans stole this word from Greek. It wasn't original to their language. Rosa. Rosa means rose. We actually get things like a rosary, which is a prayer beads that people use in the Catholic Church. It comes from rose, right? Rosa. Rosary is, right, a bead of roses. And it's because they used to actually use the fruit from a rose plant to make beads. Sententia. Sententia is feeling or thought. It's not just one or the other, right? It's both of these things combined. It's somewhere in between these. We get word sentient from this. So like a sentient life form, something that can think and feel on its own, right? We get that from the word sententia, right? You will see that word a lot, usually, right? Sententia, right? It's a kind of lends to somebody's intentions, is what it's saying. Ars. Ars is art. It's not hard to see the word art in ars, right? It is the same thing. And actually, you see the art of this, the art of that, right? This word art or ars is more so not just like painting, right? Like a painting or you know, a piece of music. Yeah, that's art, but this word art is more so saying like a skill, right? The art of something, right? That's what we're saying in this. But it does also mean painting and those sorts of things as well. Vita, vita. This is the word in Latin for life, right? Vita. We get the word vitality from this, right? Or vital, right? If somebody, say, for instance, gets hurt and they have damage to their vital organs, it means they're organs that keep you alive, right? So vita means life. You'll see this word even used today, just as it is, but they say Vita. Even I think of the PlayStation Vita, right? It was a video game console, which literally just meant the PlayStation Life. That's all it meant, right? Volant, they fly, right? We see, remember, and I'm showing you these guys, you guys, these endings, right? Student, they are eager. Volant, they fly, right? So that nt sound, right? That nt sound is giving us the they, right? In that. Okay, let us do a couple of really simple sentences. I'll do them with you guys. So salve, remember, salve is hello, right? It means, right, to be well. It is how it's saying, and we get the word salutations from this, as I said last time. Salve, o patria. This is a very famous phrase. It's just greeting your homeland, right? Right, greetings, O fatherland, is what it means, right? And this is a very famous expression from Latin, and sometimes people even say it still today. Me pilesopiai do. Oh, wow, we see that O, it means I, but I give. I give me pilesopiai. I give my philosophy is what it means, right? So that I is showing that this is a possessive, it's his, right? Mine. And me is also just like the modern word, me or myself. Philosophia est ars vitae, right? Philosophia est ars vitae. This means philosophy is the art of life. Now see that est is the verb. It isn't at the end of the sentence. It doesn't have to be all the time. Normally the verb will be at this end of the sentence, but once in a while, sometimes they'll put it into different places. But once again, as I said right from the beginning, Latin is not like English. We can put the words any which way in the sentence. It doesn't matter where they are because those endings are telling us exactly what they're doing. We don't need to worry about where the words are. The only thing that changes with the words is how much emphasis, right? So if we wanted to really put a lot of emphasis on philosophy, which is what we are doing, we would put philosophy first, right? Right? Or the life, right? We die, right? The life of, right? If we wanted to put a lot of emphasis on that, we could say, we die philosophia es ars, right? It would still say the same thing. Now we'll look at the last one, fama et sententia volant. Fame is fama, like fame or fortune, glory, that kind of thing. Fame and thought, right? They fly, right? They fly, meaning they leave, right? They're just very free in their own spirit. All right. I want to go through very quickly really common Roman names, because these names, if you study Latin or you study any kind of history, especially the history of Rome or even just anywhere in the West, you are going to see people named these names. I've chosen very important people in Roman history to say their names so that you can just hear them and you'll know, oh yes, I've heard that name before ahead of time. All right, so let's start with the names for men. All right, Augustus, right? Cassius, Catullus, Claudius, Fabius, Germanicus, right? Remember, not J. There's no J sound with this letter, right? It's G, Germanicus, Germanicus, not Germanicus, right? In English, we say Germanicus, but we're not speaking English, right? It's Latin pronunciation. So Germanicus, Germanicus, Marcus. You might realize that the modern word name Mark is Marcus. That's the old version of that name, Marcus. Romulus. Romulus, we will be talking a little bit about Romulus once in a while. He's one of the founders of Rome, right? Yeah. Lucius. Now, this is a name that sometimes pops up in modern times. Lucius is how we pronounce it now, but it actually, in the old way of pronouncing, it's Lucius. Lucius, and actually means the one who is with light, right? The bringer of light is actually what that means, because the word lux means light in Latin. A lot of names in almost all names in Roman, the Roman way of naming things, they mean things, right? Lots of languages are like this. And then we have Remus, right, which is Romulus's brother, Remus. And we have Virgilius, the poet Virgil. If you learn any more Latin at all, you'll be encountering Virgil. He's very important writer. Then we have Octavius, right? Octavius is the first emperor of Rome, right? Octavius. We call him Octavian in English. All right, let's do the female names. Agrippina. Agrippina is a famous Roman name, right? Anna, Camilla, Cassandra. Cassandra is actually an ancient Greek name, but the Romans liked some of the Greek names and would actually continue them on. But they don't spell it with a K. In Greek, they would spell it with a K. As I said, the Romans used C. C was a Roman invention. Diana. Diana, the goddess of the hunt, yes. Drusilla, right? Drusilla is also actually a Greek name as well, that was kind of taken by the Romans. Like I said, the Romans loved to copycat everything the Greeks did, right? They seen the Greeks do something and they're like, we want to do it better than you guys. And so they would steal it usually. Flora. Flora is it literally means flower, right? And we get the word flora, right? Floral, flowery, right? That sort of thing. That's where we get that from. Helena, right? Helena is the name Helen, right? It is another ancient Greek name. Julia, right? We had Julius, Julia, right? There's a lot of instances in this of this kind of thing in Latin where you'll have a boy version of a name and a girl version of a name, and usually it just changes that us or a, right? That's all that it usually changes, right? Julia, right? It's the name Julia today, right? Lavinia. Lavinia is actually that's the name of Octavius's his wife, Lavinia. Lucia, right? Lucia, right? Lucius, Lucia, right? It's the female version of that name. Octavia, right? Or Octavia in English today, right? You may realize that the number 8 is hidden inside of that name, right? Octo, right? Octo, like an octopus. An octopus has 8 legs. Octo means 8. So the Romans used to do this. They would actually name their children numbers. It comes from a very, 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 very old tradition, even older than the Romans, of naming your children how many number of kids you had. It's kind of funny, but they didn't do this. So for instance, you could have a daughter and she wasn't your 8th daughter and call her Octavia, because the Romans eventually just started liking these names. They just thought they were pretty names or cool names, or maybe, very famous people might have been called certain names and they're like, well, I want that name for my child, right? That started happening, right? So it doesn't mean that if you hear somebody's name Octavius or something that they're the 8th one, right? They just liked the sound by this point of that name. Okay. So let's summarize everything up that we did. today before we split off, right? Right. So we did the explanation of the SPQR signum, right? Many people don't know what that means, right? They don't realize that that was a kind of like how we use flags in modern times, right? If we have a Canadian flag or an American flag or whatever kind of flag, doesn't matter, right? It's kind of a representation of that country. The SPQR is the kind of representation, one of the symbols that the Romans would use, right? To say, yes, we are here, right? The people and the Senate of Rome, as it means. We talked about word order. Latin word order is not the same as English word order, right? It's different, right? We have subject, object, verb in Latin, not subject, verb, object like in English. Right? And actually, just a little fun thing for you guys to know that the word order in Latin, the subject, object, verb order, a lot of the world's languages actually follow that word order more than any other style, right? Actually, I can only think of one language off the top of my head that starts with the verb right away, and that's Arabic. Actually, they're really backwards in that way. Okay, so we talked about how that's how like English makes the order of the words in English is super important. It's we can't throw the words all over the place in English, or we'll be saying all kinds of things we don't want to say, right? We have to place them in the right places so that we understand what's going on. Latin doesn't do this. This is, if you're to learn anything about Latin, knowing this will make it easier than just jumping into Latin and trying to learn it. Really understanding how the meaning comes from those endings. We learned that those endings are called case endings, right? They're the case endings of Latin, so that they're telling us what is going on, right? They show us what is the function of that word. Whatever word it is, it's that ending on the noun. It's telling us what the noun is doing in the sentence. Is the noun a subject of the sentence? Is the noun an indirect object of the sentence? A direct object of the sentence? Is it possessive, etc.? You don't have to hold all of these things that the noun can do in your head right away. Don't get too worried. I'm just telling you this stuff now because then whenever we get to it, then you're like, oh, yeah, 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 we talked a little bit about that. This is what that is about, right? I'm always going to try to do a little bit of this so you can work and then you're not getting scared when you see something new. Some of you might not be worried. Some of you might know some stuff or pick up languages easy or history or what have you. And then some of you may not, right? And Latin is one of these languages where if we don't get all of these basics down, and I've seen this happen to people in university where they think, oh, it's easy, I know it, it's good, like I can keep going, and they say that for the first few weeks, and then it starts to get really complicated and all kinds of stuff goes on, and so they are having to be like, oh no, I have to go back, I have to read some of the old chapter to really understand. We want to make sure that never happens to you guys, right? Never at all. That you guys are really good with the basics so that whenever you guys are older, right? Because we can't do all of Latin. Latin is way too complicated of a language to do all very tightly close together. But when you get to that stuff, this stuff is going to be almost done, right? Because some people try to get into university, they think, oh, I'll learn Latin, and they don't put in the effort into this small stuff. All right, and we talked about the culture of the family in this book, right? This is real people. They're real people who lived in England during the time of the Roman conquest, right? And that's always really intriguing whenever we can relate to people from the way, 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 way far back past. You know, it always makes us really interested in what they did, right? And it makes us actually very curious when we find out that some of the things they did are very similar to some of the things we do today, right? And we're going to see a lot of that in this book, right? I also gave you a quick introduction to verbs, right? As I say, we'll be covering that stuff more in detail later on, but we're getting a bit of our feet a little bit into the pool, so to say, of studying some verbs, right? We did some Roman numerals, or at least looked at them, seen a little bit like how they worked, and then ended off with some so the practice sentences, right? So yeah, this is what we've done today, and we're going to continue on with the next class, and we're going to put a lot more practice of the nouns into function, right? With some more practice sentences, not just from the Minimus book, but sentences that I'll make through the slideshows for you guys to work on. So with that being said, what the assignment is for this week is to just write a complete translation of that first Meaningless comics. The comics will always be put up onto the online classroom. And honestly, if you've been paying attention, this is so easy. You can do it in 2 seconds because we'll have already finished them, right? That's easy, 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 right? And then that way you're able to practice doing the other stuff yourself, right? Writing out the vocabulary. As I say, very important, right? Writing, and when you're writing, you speak aloud, right? And you look at the word at the same time. Obviously, you have to look at the word if you're writing it down. So you get all of these three things together, and it's like tripling the amount of studying you do. Sometimes it's a weird thing, right? Talking aloud in some weird language that nobody knows what you're saying, and it's whatever. But you'll see the amount of difference this will make in learning any language, and especially Latin, because Latin's hard in that we can't go out to Rome. We could go to Rome today and try to speak Latin, and we wouldn't be able to speak with just about with anybody, right? Great Latin, we do have people to speak Latin together with, but it's a little bit more of a closed group of people in these times.